Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. Well, today we're going to talk about self-awareness and specifically, can we become too self-aware that we kind of fall into a pattern of intellectualizing? So everyone's talking about awareness and I talk about it a lot as well. And it's the first step in my neurocycle, gathering awareness. But notice that I'm actually emphasizing the word gathering awareness. So I'm not just saying be aware, I am saying gather awareness. So it's a deliberate, intentional, conscious act of gathering. Like you pick apples and you choose it. So you go into an apple orchard and you're picking apples in an apple orchard. You don't just go up to the first tree and shake it and all the apples fall on your head and knock you out and you pick up rotten ones, whatever. You go and choose a tree and you reach up and you look at that apple and you look at that. You're gathering and put them into your basket. That's a great way of thinking about awareness. It's a process to do awareness well. That's going to help you and not get you stuck in over-intellectualizing, overthinking, getting sort of so stuck in the process that you actually end up ruminating and feeling worse. Healing is generally you can feel worse before you get better. So I just want to qualify that statement. But we can become so aware that we don't land the plane. So we open all these lids of all these bottles, or we get all these things started, but we don't finish them. All these planes take off, but they're all flying around in the air and none of them are landing, so they all start crashing. The awareness that I am talking about is where you choose what you're going to be aware about. It's very specific to the issue that's disrupting your functioning in that moment. Or if it's a pattern that's disrupting a series of things in your life, like relationships and so on, and it's disruptive, it's affecting your functioning, then you're going to specifically go into a state of gathering awareness around that. And as you know, in my process, you break it down into the 4 signals and you go through the 5 steps. But let's talk a little bit more about what happens if we get too self-aware in the wrong way and how that can lead to kind of intellectualizing our emotions and our behaviors and our perspectives and our body sensations without really getting to the core of the processing. If you recall, I always talk about how thoughts look like trees. And when we're gathering awareness, as I said, it's been the first step, we're going through the process of not just being aware. I'm aware that I feel like this. I'm aware of this in my body. I'm aware of my breathing. I'm aware of, we're not just going to shoot all these planes into the sky and leave them open, or take all the lids off the boxes and open all the closets in the house and just leave it all open and not, everything inside's a big mess and all just comes falling out. We're actually going to open the closet, pull everything out, reorganize it, throw away what we don't need, wash what's dirty or whatever, repack it in a nice organized way. So there's a cool analogy. So, and that is landing the plane. When you do that, you are actually sending off 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 planes. Let's say 4 planes, 1 for each of the 4 signals: emotions, behaviors, body sensations, and perspective. And you sending those, gathering awareness of those planes, and then you are landing each plane as you reflect on the 4 signals, as you write down what you've gathered awareness of and reflected on, as you recheck. As you get to the active reach, it's parked in the hangar. Okay, so you're going through that process if you want to use the landing of the planes concept. So we can't just open a bunch of doors and close and leave it open. We need to land the plane, we need to tidy the closet, whatever analogy you want, and that comes back to what we're doing with the thought. We're gathering awareness of things in our life, and those things and how we're showing up in our emotions and body sensations and behaviors and perspective. We're finding the thought they attach to, we're deconstructing. You hear me say that all the time, but you cannot hear it often enough. It's a process. If we just become aware, not even gather, just become aware, and we don't do anything with that, we are shooting those planes off into the sky. So now I put up a post recently, and I'm going to read it to you. It is possible to be too self-aware to the point where you try intellectualize away feelings and emotions. This is often a sneaky defense mechanism used to avoid processing hard emotions. Be aware of this and allow yourself to feel so that you can heal. I say this often, you have to feel to heal. And a lot of people say something very similar. So this is something we know instinctively. It's universal, okay? So if I just become aware, for those of you that have done my neurocycle, there's a brain prep section. For those of you that know my book, Cleaning Up Your Mental Mess, and we'll put the link to this latest book and neurocycle app, and I strongly recommend you guys get both. You will see that I do a brain preparation first. So brain preparation are all those things that cover like breathing, meditation, however, there's so many versions of meditation that you can do, visualization, just thoughts that you can focus on, like momentum mori. I give you 25 different ideas for brain preparation in the app alone. And there's a whole bunch in here too. And we're adding more and more to the app as well. So those help you to set the stage to be aware. Then you start gathering awareness. So what I'm saying is that in order to do awareness properly, that you don't over-intellectualize, you need to have brain preparation done. You need to have a gather focus of awareness, and you need to have a way of landing the plane. And that's what I provide with my neurocycle. So let's talk about what happens how do you recognize when you're not doing that? And even in the neurocycle, some of you may be using the neurocycle and you may think that you're moving through the 5 steps, but you're actually getting stuck maybe on step 2. And I've had people reach out and say they can't get beyond step 1. And that could be because you are doing awareness, but not gathering awareness and pushing yourself to the next steps. And a good way of doing that, just very quickly as a tip while I'm thinking about it at this stage of the podcast, is that if you find yourself getting stuck on the awareness stage, you can set the timer, literally set your timer to go off every couple of minutes, 2-3 minutes max. I would start with max. You can even start with 1 minute and train yourself to only gather awareness of those 4 signals. And then when the alarm goes off on your phone, go to the next step and you can then same thing, set the alarm for the reflect step, also keep it around 2 to 3 minutes. With the right step, you can go longer, I'd say 5 to 7 minutes. And then the recheck, 5 to 7 minutes, active reach, well, that's just you setting the plan, so that's pretty quick, 2 minutes. That kind of will fill in your 15-minute window. If you find you're still getting stuck, you can shorten that even more and shorten it down to 5 minutes, where you literally spend a minute on each step. But I would even spend 30 seconds on the first step, 30 seconds on the second step, 2 minutes on the writing, 1 minute, and then 30 seconds, something like that. It's not a hard and fast rule, but you get the idea. Shorten it and time yourself. That'll train yourself to not just be aware. It'll teach you to land the plane. Okay, so if you just create awareness, send off all the planes without landing them, what does that look like? Okay, what it looks like is that you start intellectualizing away the feelings and emotions. So you almost say, okay, well, I have that emotion of angst or anguish or anxiety or despair or depression. These are my behaviors, whatever. And these are what I'm saying and doing. And this is the perspective. But then you start using therapy talk. It's easy to do therapy talk. Guys, you just have to look at social media and it's full of therapy talk, okay? There's so many social media influencers in this world now out there that you can get this incredible amount of wonderful free advice, but not all of it's good all the time because you can't do everything all the time. But you can also learn the lingo very easily these days now because of our access to social media. So we can gather awareness, and then that starts making us feel something. The gathering awareness makes us like, oh my goodness, and you get this whole body response because every experience is embodied. So doing this gather awareness, or just becoming aware, pulls up all this sensation in our body, and then it's like it's overwhelming. So we, as a coping mechanism, start saying, okay, well, this is, and you start using therapy talk and intellectualizing, and you spend a lot of time in step 1 and step 2. Maybe don't even, you're doing like you're aware, and then you're talking about why you're aware. But instead of actually talking about the reasons you're aware, in that this is coming from this experience, etc., and digging down to the core issue, it's more giving names. Oh, this is desensitization. This is projection. This is I'm doing that. This is coming. So it's a lot of, and you think a lot of description using psychological terms over intellectualizing it, and then also doing things like avoiding actually dealing with the emotion. So it's like it's too much, it's overwhelming. Let me just kind of describe it. And I'm aware now, I'm desensitizing, I'm thising, I'm depersonalizing, I'm in a trauma response, I'm this and that, and it's PTSD. And you use these labels, which are descriptions, but you just stick around that level. And then you find yourself, all day long, I'm this, I'm that. I've seen this so much in people that I've worked with. I have done this at times myself as well, but I've learning how not to do that. Doesn't make me, I haven't got it, I'm still learning, but I recognize when I'm starting to do that, where I'm intellectualizing it to the point where I'm describing it, but I'm not processing it. So why am I feeling like this? And allowing myself to sit with those different signals of the emotions and behaviors and so on, and really sit with them and see what they're attached to and where they're coming from. And this has happened, and how could I see this differently? How can I reconceptualize them? That step goes missing. And so the real sitting doesn't happen, and you don't really get to the issue, the core issue. As I say in this in the post, this is often a sneaky defense mechanism to avoid processing. And very often you can find yourself in the intellectualizing that you start talking about, helping others more, which is great to help others, but you use that almost as a way of not dealing with your own stuff. So it's okay. I've got all this knowledge. I can see this happening, but then you go to someone else. Hey, this, and you need to. And that, as I said, it's good to help others, but you've got to deal with your own stuff as well, because your own stuff, if you don't deal with it, as we all know, it's going to volcanically explode at some point. So allowing yourself to feel the messy and uncomfortable feelings is okay. If you don't have the right words and the logic to explain them and to make sense out of them, you've come to the right place, because this podcast is called Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, but you've got to start with being a mess first. How many times have you heard me say, and if you haven't, if this is the first time, let me say this to you, it's okay to be a mess. It's really okay to be a mess. So whatever comes up, it's going to make you feel messy. I can tell you, when you gather awareness, when you brain prep, gather awareness and reflect and put that on the metacog, you're going to feel a mess, and it's okay to feel a mess. But because you're progressing through in this organized way, you're gathering the signals and you're reflecting on the whys, and you stick to a time frame and you write it down, and once you've written it down, you use colors and whatever, the whole neurocycle process helps you to land the plane. Otherwise, you just get stuck in the first step of awareness, and that can really spiral you into kind of not moving forward. You can get stuck, and it's no longer gathering. It's just like, a sinking sand type experience. When we begin to heal, we start unpacking the overwhelming nature of intense emotions. Now, think of surgery. I had to have an emergency appendectomy last year, and it led to complications, and I ended up having 2 more surgeries after that, and I'm doing well now. But boy, the pain to go through, especially with the third surgery, my goodness, I was in agony over December with the third surgery. There were days I couldn't move. It was so much pain. It's the worst pain I've ever experienced. But the healing now, I feel incredible. And if I didn't have that fixed up, there's no ways I would feel like this now. Okay, and I know that you know this, and you can relate to this example, but you've got to do that with your feelings as well. I can't just be aware that I couldn't just sit with the pain and not have the surgery. I had to have the pain, which made the pain worse. But I knew that because the worseness was the opening up of the wound and all that kind of stuff, and worseness is even such a word. And then I had to go through this process of, it came from here, this is the time it's going to take. And but I could deal with that. It's kind of easier to deal with surgical pain or pain from an injury or something like that, than physical pain. I mean, emotional pain, experiential pain, mind pain. I should rather say mind pain, because emotional pain is only one part of mind pain. We've got mind pain has emotions and behaviors and bodily sensations and perspective. Okay, it's got different dimensions to it. So mind pain is just really hard to deal with. So when it gets worse, and especially with the current messaging of, if your emotions are getting worse, that you've got a brain disease that's getting worse, you've got something coming back, or it's getting worse, you need more of this or that, med-wise or whatever, or you're told that, there's this genetic thing that you can't control, and, scary stuff, which is not true. It's just disproven, that has been disproved. What you're experiencing, that pain, is so valid because it's coming from such a valid story that you have. And your reactions to that story, which were coping mechanisms, added to that. And so when we start becoming aware, we can get, it can be overwhelming. The other side of awareness is that we can become aware, and it's so exciting to become aware because now we can, just talk about this all the time and talk about, like round and round in circles. I've done group work, therapy work, where I've had some patients that have come to the group therapy where each week it's the same thing, and eventually you have to, it's the same thing, go in a circle, and then they seem to, be moving forward. They come back and same circle, but what they've done is just stayed aware, but there hasn't been the growth and the progression forward. So when we begin to heal, we start unpacking the overwhelming nature of intense emotions and all the behaviors and the other 4 signals that go with it. And we start making connections with our emotions, and we see that how it's connected with our behaviors, and how it's connected with our bodily sensations, and how it's connected with our perspective. We start seeing, hey, that's connected with how I see myself, and that's connected with some kind of processing that I did because of some kind of experience. And that is hard. That is hard, time-consuming, and is a very good thing to go through in terms of going through all those levels. It's not good to just try and get rid of it and suppress it. So sometimes we can get so good at therapy, though, and so good at therapy talk and reasoning that we begin to intellectualize all our emotions instead of feeling them. So in other words, guys, you gather awareness, you have to feel them, and that's why I take you from gather awareness, not just awareness, but brain preparation, gather awareness, into reflection. Think of reflection, which is the second step. When you reflect, think of a white light shining through a prism. When you shine a white light through a prism, it comes out as the rainbow on the other side. So when you start gathering awareness and you start reflecting on what you've gathered awareness of, there's a lot of depth to that starts coming out. And that's what, the tendency can be, the tendency to over-intellectualize, and as we've been saying, and then that, you lose that depth. You're going to just kind of ignore that, and just the white light, just take the white light shining onto the prism, and that's not going to take you through the process. You have to get to the rainbow. You have to, work through those layers. But you don't want to stay there, or you'll get stuck in the sinking sand. You want to do the work to see where they came from, and do the reconceptualization, get those active reaches in fixed time frames. You can't do it all now. It's got to be in these fixed time frames. When we intellectualize our feelings too much because of knowledge gained from therapy talk, or reading lots of social media posts, or listening to TikTok, we are really just avoiding processing feelings. So I'm not saying it's bad to not look at social media. I hope all of you follow me on social media, and that my stuff helps you. And there's some excellent, good and terrible stuff out there, okay? And you need to be very, very discerning, because you can just end up kind of labeling what you're aware of, which can make you feel worse, as I've been saying. In conclusion, to help you understand why you can't just be aware, that you have to go beyond awareness in the way I've been describing. When you first become aware of something, it's all-consuming. Can you see how this little stone is completely taken up all the space of this little cup? It's all-consuming. It's all you can think about. So if you're just in awareness all the time and using over-intellectualizing and therapy talk to just try and not process, you're going to get stuck. But once you start gathering awareness and going through the process of reflecting, like the prism example I gave you, you actually then creating space around that. Now the awareness is getting space around it because you've now gathered awareness, as opposed to just being aware, sending all those planes out into the air. And you're starting to reflect on that and get some more understanding and depth. So you are moving forward. You're not going round and round the mountain. It's not this movement, it's that movement. It's forward progression. And as you carry on working through the neurocycle, you land up over time, not in the first day, but each 5 steps of the neurocycle is taking you through this progression. And eventually, as you get through to the 63 days, or just using the neurocycle, the 5 steps, all the time on a regular basis, eventually you get to the point where your awareness is there. There's the little issue. There's the stone, same stone, but different size glass or jug or container. So you've gone from being consumed to having tremendous perspective. So when we intellectualize, we lose our perspective. When we just therapy talk, when we just stay aware without moving forward, we get stuck. But if we keep moving forward, use awareness in the correct way, we get perspective, we get space, we move forward. Thanks for joining me today. I look forward to seeing you next time.